The battle for Elm Street. It was a Tuesday morning in early October, the kind of day that makes you want to linger on your porch with a mug of coffee and soak in the crisp air. The sun was peeking over the rooftops of Elmwood Meadows, a suburban enclave where every lawn was manicured and every mailbox matched. I, Tom Reynolds, stood there, admiring my 2018 Chevy Silverado parked on the street in front of my house. It was nothing flashy, just a reliable truck, paid off and gleaming in the morning light. Everything was perfect until I saw it. A neon yellow slip tucked under the windshield wiper, screaming trouble in a neighborhood that thrived on beige conformity. That slip was the spark that ignited a war, one that would pit me against the iron fist of the Elmwood Meadows Homeowners Association and its president, Susan Whitaker. This is the story of how I fought back, turned the tables, and changed our street forever. I'm a 52-year-old freelance web developer, having traded the corporate grind for the freedom of working from home. My house on Elm Street was my sanctuary, my mortgage the only debt I carried, and my biggest worry that morning was whether to grill burgers or order takeout for dinner. But that yellow slip shattered the peace. I crossed the lawn, the dew cold on my bare feet, and pulled the paper free. In bold, accusatory letters, it read, Homeowners Association Violation Notice. Violator, Tom Reynolds, 214, Elm Street. Violation, improperly parked vehicle in public thoroughfare. Fine, $50. I glanced at my truck. It was legally parked, not blocking a hydrant or a driveway, just sitting on a public street maintained by the city. Across the street, I caught Susan Whitaker's gaze. She was in her late 50s, with a bob of ash blonde hair that looked like it could survive a tornado. She was pretending to prune her roses, but her eyes were locked on me, a smug smile curling her lips. Susan was the HOA president, a woman who seemed to thrive on enforcing rules that made no sense. I felt a slow burn in my chest. This wasn't just a finite, it was an attack on reason. Hoping to clear things up, I crossed the street. Morning, Susan, I said, holding up the slip. There's got to be a mistake. My truck's on a public street. The city owns it, right? Susan set down her pruning shears with deliberate care, her expression one of practiced pity. Oh, Tom, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. I know the rules can be tricky for newer residents. I'd lived there for 3 years. When you bought your home, you signed the covenants, conditions, and restrictions. The CC and RS clearly state that vehicles must be parked in driveways or garages to maintain the neighborhood's visual appeal. Visual appeal? I said, incredulous. It's a truck, not a junkyard. And it's a public street. Susan's smile tightened. While the street may be public, it falls under the HOA's aesthetic oversight. If everyone parked on the street, it'd look cluttered, and property values would suffer. I stared at her, dumbfounded. My truck was a personal vehicle, not some rusted eyesore. The conversation went nowhere, like arguing with a wall that could fine you. Susan suggested I park my girlfriend's car at the community load a 15-minute walk away when she visited. I walked away, the yellow slip crumpling in my fist, vowing to fight this absurdity. That night, I dug out the HOA's CC and RS, a binder so thick it could double as a doorstop. I cracked a beer and started reading. It was a manifesto of control, dictating everything from the shade of your curtains to the height of your lawn. Holiday lights? Only up 14 days before a holiday, down 48 hours after. Flower pots? Only in approved colors, beige, taupe, or stone gray. Basketball hoops? Banned to keep the streets joyless. And garden gnomes? No taller than 18 inches, lest they offend the HOA's delicate sensibilities. It was micromanagement on steroids, and buried in Section 8, subsection C, was the vague rule about parking, claiming authority over street clutter. I called my friend Mark, a corporate lawyer who dealt with contracts, not HOA disputes. Tom, you're right, he said after I read him the rule. The HOA can't override city law. It's a public street, but fighting them is a nightmare. They've got a war chest and a lawyer who lives for this. Pay the $50 and move on. His advice was practical, but it stung. Paying meant admitting Susan was right, bowing to her reign of beige terror. I couldn't do it. I decided to appeal at the HOA's next meeting, armed with logic and evidence. I was naive then, believing reason could win. The meeting was held in Susan's garage, a sterile space that looked like it had never seen a speck of dust. Susan sat at a folding table, flanked by Margaret, an elderly woman knitting with mechanical precision, and Harold, a retired accountant with a perpetual frown. I presented my case. Printouts from the city's website proving Elm Street was public, a county map confirming it, and a calm argument that the HOA had no jurisdiction. Susan barely glanced at my evidence. "Tom," she said, her voice icy, "this isn't about legal ownership. It's about our community's standards. One truck today, an RV tomorrow. It's a slippery slope." Margaret muttered, "Standards are standards," without looking up. Harold nodded like a puppet. My appeal was denied, and the fine was doubled to $100 for being late. I left, humiliated, my papers useless. The war escalated. I paid the $100 in rolls of nickels, dropping them into the HOA lockbox with a satisfying clank. I kept parking my truck on the street, a daily act of defiance. Susan responded with a flood of yellow slips. My lawn was a quarter-inch too tall, $25. My trash cans lingered curbside 12 minutes past 9 a.m., $25. And a tiny oil stain on my driveway, $30. I fought back with petty rebellion. I mowed my lawn at 7:01 a.m., the second the noise ordinance lifted, in a tower display of crisscross patterns. I bought a fluorescent orange trash can, technically compliant but an eyesore among the black bins. I replaced my welcome mat with one that read, "Leave," in tiny, bland font. When Susan fined me for a forgotten Halloween pumpkin, I knew I was under a microscope, my home no longer a haven but a battlefield. Mark was exasperated. "Tom, move or burn it down. This is insane." I couldn't let Susan win, but I needed a way out. The answer came unexpectedly from a contractor named Joe, hired to fix a sagging fence panel. Joe's work van, parked on the street, got a yellow slip for being a commercial vehicle. He stormed to my door, furious. "This is harassment," he roared. "I work for the county sometimes. They own this street, not your HOA lady." His words hit like lightning. The county owns the street. I'd been fighting on Susan's turf, but the county was the real authority. I dove into the county's website, a clunky maze of outdated links. Deep in a section on public works, I found Ordinance 47B. A citizen could lease a county road for civic beautification for a nominal fee. It was meant for community gardens or art projects, but it was my loophole. I registered Tom Reynolds LLC for $50, making me sound official. On Monday, I called the county clerk's office and spoke to Doris, a board clerk who perked up when I pitched my beautification and traffic flow project for Elm Street. I offered to lease the road for $1 a year, covering maintenance costs. Doris was thrilled by the novelty. "No one's used this ordinance in ages," she said, emailing me the forms. 2 weeks later, a manila envelope arrived. I was now the legal lessee of Elm Street for $1. I hired Joe to install 2 custom signs at either end of the block, bold aluminum plaques reading, "Property under private lease to Tom Reynolds LLC. No unauthorized parking. Violators towed at owner's expense." We set them up at dawn, Joe's nephew digging post holes while I sipped coffee, feeling like a mastermind. The trap was set. At 7:30 a.m., Susan stepped out for her newspaper and froze. Her face cycled through confusion, disbelief, then rage as she read the sign. She called the police, then pounded on my door. "What is this?" she shrieked. I handed her a copy of the lease, smiling. "It's my road now, Susan. Your minivan's on my property without a permit. That'll be $75, or I'll have it towed." She was speechless, clutching the paper like it was poison. 2 police cars arrived, led by officers Daniels and Carter, who'd dealt with Susan's last complaint. Daniels, a grizzled veteran, read my lease and burst into laughter. "In 25 years, I've never seen this," he said, handing it back. "It's his road, ma'am. This is a civil matter." Susan's face collapsed. The neighbors, now watching, whispered in awe. I waved cheerfully as Susan stormed off, defeated. The neighborhood erupted. Residents panicked about parking, but I'd already cleared access for mail and garbage trucks. Susan's all-caps email blasting my hostile takeover only fueled support for me. People who'd suffered her fines cheered quietly. The HOA called an emergency meeting at the middle school auditorium, packed with residents and a local news crew. Susan ranted, calling me a tyrant. Doris, the clerk, sat bewildered on stage. I took the podium, calm but firm. "This isn't about a truck," I said. "It's about bullying. An HOA should serve us, not fine us for pumpkins or legal parking." I tried reason, but Susan doubled my fine. So I leased the street to prove a point. The crowd murmured approval. I'll end the lease tomorrow if the HOA amends the CC and RS to exclude public roads, and Susan resigns. The room exploded. Neighbors stood, cheering. Susan, cornered, stormed out, resigning on the spot. The board agreed to my terms. A week later, Elm Street was free. My signs hung in my garage like war trophies. The HOA, under new leadership, stopped nitpicking. The news called me a suburban hero. That Friday, I sat on the curb with Joe, beers in hand, my truck parked behind us. "You're a legend," Joe said. I grinned. It was about principle, and it was fun. Susan's house was for sale, and the street felt alive again. That $1 lease was the best money I ever spent. What do you think? Was I right to fight Susan's overreach, or did I go too far? Share your thoughts in the comments, especially on dealing with petty tyranny and injustice in your own life. Let's hear your stance.